So welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander,
And I'm Grant.
and we're very
And I
slightly
think I'm
delayed.
Luke Hughes.
But today
And I'm
we're
Luke
here
Hughes.
with Luke from Burden of Command. If you're active on social media, you'll have seen him over the past couple of years posting pictures of a digital war game that he's designing. And so we wanted to kind of get together, have a chat about that because it looks really good and it has a lot of inspirations that come from the traditional board wargaming world. And we kind of want to see where that's at in the process and kind of pick your brain about what we can expect coming from Burden of Command and maybe other projects coming in the future as well. So, how about you just start
Well,
by introducing yourself to everyone out
so I'm Luke Hughes, and I'm the lead for Burden of Command, which you say is a digital. I'll correct you slightly because I have to get my marketing lines out. Burden is not a war game. It is a leadership RPG, which draws heavily on the wargaming tradition for the tactical. But having said that, it is drawn heavily on the wargaming side. So I don't deny that. And I'm a long-term board gamer. Not one of these crazy digital guys trying to get in on your action. I've been
there?
playing. My first one was Avalon Hill, Gettysburg, the original version. I coerced my dad to playing it with me when I was 12, and then I was lost with the Third Reich game. And then when I was older, I spent way too many hours in Axis Empires, and I've certainly played squad leader, as you'd hope. But I will confess these days, I may play a little more quartermaster general than I should say. But first, I am a board gamer. I am from the tribe, I hope. I want to say I'm a big fan of you guys. I watch you because I'm interested in the hobby. I love your designer interviews. So it's a particular privilege for me to be on this. And one of my goals is to cross the digital divide. Since I've lived in both worlds, my background was computer science and neurophysiology and so forth. But, as a board gamer, I still am. So may I say one thing on the digital divide and then, turn it back to you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. So why do I want to cross the digital divide other than it sounds nice? Digital divide between, cardboard and digital. Well, honestly, it's not, I'm not trying to, of course, I'd like you guys to come play Burden eventually, duh. But it's very important to me to cross the divide the other way. And the reason is, I gave a talk on this to Georgetown Wargaming Society, and it was about marrying cardboard and digital. And when I talk about Burden, I'll explain that. And at the beginning, I thought very hard. There must be some qualitative differences between, what you can do in cardboard, what you can do in digital. And I'm going to say some really clever things about, you can't do fog of war very well in cardboard, right? But
Yep.
I failed because, gosh darn it, Voco, could you be a little less creative? So, of course, he's showing Coast Watchers, and of course, he's solving a fog of war problem. And there have been other ways that has been solved, like cards are essentially a fog of war, event lookups are a card of war. There are many ways to solve it. And I came to the conclusion that there is no qualitative feature difference between cardboard and digital. Rather, it's sort of a meta level, namely, and this is why I want to cross the divide. Cardboard, I'm speaking now as a digital designer, has this amazingly creative innovation cycle because I believe, and I have a business background, I worked for Accenture, you have a very, relatively speaking, cheaper development cost and cycle. And I've designed a board game, which I can talk about later. So I'm not talking through my hat. I know the effort, and I thought it was a huge amount of effort. But my gosh, persuading computers to do anything is a lot more effort. But
You have to develop an entire new language to talk to computers.
oh my gosh, they're so obtuse. We just have to get the AI doing everything, and and then we'll be Wally World. But I'm actually my formal degree is in AI. If you ever want to chat about that. So I looked at cardboard, and I'm not BSing here, though I am being, complimentary. I looked at cardboard as a great source of innovation because so many things can be tried. Further, the risk profile, AAA, digital, even low indie, you fail. You've sunk so much money. You're hosed. So risk taking's dangerous. And of course, it's dangerous in board game, but not at the same level. And so there's so much more innovation in cardboard than I see in digital still that I draw on it. And that's what I did in Burden. So Now, digital does have one advantage, obviously, which is I would say automation, and then automation and obviously ease of replication. If people like Burden, they can all download it. It's a little trickier with cardboard. So we have some advantages in the digital side, but from a
Yeah.
creativity, I think you guys do. I mean, it's kind of disgusting trying to keep up with all the creativity. So anyway, it's very important to me to cross this divide.
Well, one thing I would say about we play a lot of digital games. We've done traditional video games online together. I mean, we played like Call of Duty and other things
On your
recently. No, not on the channel, just in our
No.
personal
Yeah.
life. But we enjoy it. In fact, we play Gloomhaven is a very cool, innovative board game, and we've got the digital downloads of those, and we've played. I mean, Alexander, how many hundreds of hours have we
Oh,
logged
we don't
on
talk about the
those?
numbers here.
Yeah.
It's
Now, wait a
embarrassing.
second. Have I ruined? Oh my gosh! Like I feel like I've betrayed your dark secret now.
No,
We do both.
if you
Like
saw
Zilla.
how many hours I have in like StarCraft 2 and Civ 5 back in the day, like that's what I
Yeah.
did before we
All right.
were into board gaming.
All right. We all sin occasionally, do digital.
Moments of weakness.
Exactly.
So,
So,
Burden of Command,
right.
real quick.
Yeah,
Can we just give an overview of what the game is and what it looks like, the player
absolutely.
counts, what type style of game it is for everyone out there?
So we have a YouTube channel if you want more, lots of 2-minute videos because our attention spans are limited. We have a website, obviously Steam. But I'm gonna say my way, and then I'm gonna say it from Strategy Informer's way, which I think will interest this audience. If I were to say what Burden of Command is, I was in Silicon Valley, so you had to have make your elevator pitch. My elevator pitch in one word is leadership. In 2 words, it's leadership RPG. In 3 words, it's lead an infantry company in World War II. Think like Captain Winters or something. From Morocco, we follow the cotton balers from the 7th Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, all the way to the Eagle's Nest. By the way, interesting aside, who actually got to the Eagle's Nest, Hitler's Eagle's Nest first, Band of Brothers or cotton balers? There's some evidence for that. I'm just trying to be.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to debate it. Actually, I'll stick our consulting historian John McManus on you. But
Yeah.
the one I'd like to quote is Strategy Informer, and check his website out in general. He's playtesting for us, and he calls Burden Squad Leader meets Band of Brothers. And I think that's honestly a pretty good description. I didn't think of it.
Mm-hmm.
So our inspirations first directly are Squad Leader. Burden of Command is squad level with individual leaders, just like the famous game. The leaders are the central quality of gameplay is managing the morale of the squads. I do some things somewhat different, obviously, in Squad Leader, but central. The leaders are central. Obviously, in Squad Leader, it's about rallying and improving firefights, which I call bolstering. And I do more things because I obsessed on making a leadership RPG. They can press, they can do a variety of leader actions. But at its heart, it's very akin to Squad Leader. We draw on, if I can be naughty again, digital XCOM, as well as Conflict of Heroes for action points, which we call orders. And the leaders, it's like a board game. You have to think, how am I going to spend my orders? Man, I want to move all my squads and my platoon forward. But boy, he really needs rallying. But man, I need to lead that firefight. But I might get killed if I lead that firefight. All we hope, interesting decisions of which I never give you enough orders, i.e. action points, to do it. I hope. We draw on Fields of Fire. By the way, I'm happy to say Ben Hull's been a nice supporter. We've had some conversations. How do we draw on Fields of Fire? There's very explicit leadership command structure, right? There's, hey, this guy, lieutenant's in charge of this platoon, same in Burden of Command. You can't order units that if you're running this particular lieutenant that are outside of first platoon or second or whatever. Captain's a little different. Also, so we enforce, order of command. One more I should probably mention is, of course, ambush. So ambush, put narrative with tactical. I did okay in the first one. I got a crush in every subsequent one, but it was still a cool experience. And if those you don't know, it's a 70s, probably 70s, maybe early 80s And you move on a hex map, but the hexes are tied to an event paragraph. And so you actually have narrative things happen. Maybe you meet civilians, maybe you run in a German prisoner, who knows? Burden of command is that. I mean, to the wazoo, right? So all kinds of things can happen based on your actions, based on the hexes you go to, based on after the battle, you're talking to your men and the other lieutenants or your superiors or Sergeant Grant about what's going on with the men, or maybe civilians. We have all kind. We did a lot of work on what historically happened. We try to model it. In fact, you even well, this isn't funny. You write letters home. The one that was making me laugh was you do paperwork, not much, but we wanted to point out what is a lot of the real officer experience, you know, paperwork. We even have medical things when the men go into Naples. Well, we all know what men might do in Naples and Freeport. And of course, there's some health issues when you do that, right? So the
Sure.
Army put a lot of effort into like training the men on here's why you should behave and not consort with the Italian ladies. Of course, they ignored it, but they did. We like put you through some of that, and you have to make some decisions about what you're communicating. My point. This is the transition point. Ambush, I would say, is World War II movie narrative tactical, right? And I know
Yes.
that's not criticism. I think they meant it deliberately. What we are, though, is we're trying to be Band of Brothers narrative. We're trying to do very soberly, often not pleasant or fun, sometimes quite graphic imagery, but not casually, difficult situations like Band of Brothers, which in my view was heavily focused on leadership issues all the way through. So, sum up, where a squad leader meets Band of Brothers. We do draw on some other digital things like XCOM for we hope ease of use and some innovations I hope I've done, tactically and otherwise. But in a nutshell, for your audience, that's how I would describe it. It's a high bar, but at least we're trying that.
Well,
Now, is
I
it
want to make a comment. You had made the comment, Luke, about paperwork. You know, it's interesting, having watched Band of Brothers many, many times myself. One of my favorite episodes, and I can't remember the number, probably
Mm,
four or five,
I
is
know.
when
Go ahead.
Winters is having to do the AAR to
That's
his
great.
superiors, and he's kind of reliving it.
Mm.
And nothing changes, but he's trying to remember the different elements, and he kind of remembers a certain thing. I've always found that episode to be a really great insight into the mind of a squad leader who was trying to, report what happened, but make it truthful, but give credence to people that had done well. I find that interesting. So that's kind of a cool element that you've added into the game.
I think we might have missed a beat. You should like message me again, but I wish we'd done that. Actually, we could have deliberately echoed, have you write. We didn't, I don't think we had you write the after action report, but would
Got
have
it.
been interesting because easy issue comes up all the time, right? Johnson died in a horrible way. Are you going to amend? Well, that's more letter. We do handle that one, letter to the family, but I'm sure there are many things like that. Like Winters obviously obscured a little bit what happened at the canal with the prisoners in one of the late episodes, right? You definitely get those kind of decisions, but literally sitting there and putting together the report would be very interesting. And by the way, we actually sent somebody to the archives and they got reports, which we have heavily digitized. We'll make it public eventually of Cotton Baylor reports. And we
Oh,
have
nice.
captains after action reports from Morocco, people at the level you're playing, what they're experiencing, what they're confused by, like fun detail. One of the big learning things from Morocco and Operation Torch is we need more coffee. Horses and bullets. We need more coffee.
Got it.
Alexander, I think I heard you trying to ask something.
Yeah, so the game itself, is it like a turn-based game, much like a traditional war game, or is it a real-time game?
It's turn-based. Okay. First, I think for me, it'd be very hard to do decent AI and many other things real time. I don't know how anybody does that, but they do. It's turn-based. It's some things I can say to this audience. It might not mean much to a more broad audience. It's impulse-driven. So, in fact, you go in what we call leadership rounds. So, in a game turn, first platoon you can activate, right? And that lieutenant does things with his command, maybe with some help from the captain. But you can't activate second platoon at the same time. Why? Well, it's the same reason, we see in lots of wonderful board war games, right? Chaos, because the enemy gets a vote, right? You would like to coordinate all your platoons and have them do everything wonderfully. and then give the enemy a chance to do something. But the enemy would like to screw with your plans, right? So impulse driven is one of the reasons we do that. We do find there's some more gamers who have an experience impulse driven, and this is a learning curve thing for them. And actually, if I can talk about learning curve for a moment, we do a lot of we are lucky to have a lot of people apply to be playtesters, and high hundreds of people, which is really useful. And we ask them to all do surveys on themselves, so we know who identifies themselves as grognards or tactical gamers, meaning like XCommers or story narrative people. And for the grognards, we found different problems, say from the XCommers. For the grognards, the wargamers, we found one, the ones who hadn't seen Impulse, just lead around, we do a lot of teaching. Other one I think is interesting, and I'm ashamed I forgot to mention Jim Crone's fine series earlier, Band of Brothers, a board game series, which I think is one of the most credible combat models. And one of the things he pushes, which we push, is it is not bang, 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 you're dead. Even in Squad Leader, it was, and still is, I may dare to say, for ASL, bang, 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 you're dead. Meaning if you shoot a lot in Combat Commander, which I love, eventually you hope you break them. And what do you do if you break them? You fire them again till they're dead, you hope, right? And you mass firepower. But in real combat, your problem is often to spread the fire because you need to suppress a lot of enemies. And if you've got somebody suppressed, they may be a little lower priority. And in real combat, we have some experts I can quote on this who've advised us. It's really more the 4Fs, meaning you suppress them. It's hard to kill them because they're going to get down behind that wall because they don't want to die, right? They're not going to stand up and surrender because you might shoot them. So you got to suppress them. Ideally, you flank them, and then you finish them, which is you assault them. And that's when they will typically not melee, even though we do that all the time in the games. They'll typically, if you suppress them, want to surrender or run away because who wants a bayonet in the stomach, right? So that, for the people, the experts, I believe, is a proper model. I was put onto that by Jim Crone's designer notes for Band of Brothers. Remember, here I cheat from the board gamers, right? And so we do that, but many, many war gamers and every other gamer we train, oh my gosh, everybody thinks it should be bang, 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 you're dead. So to sum up, what we saw in early playtesting was, okay, you've beaten the crap out of the enemy. They're red, which is our lowest morale level. What do people do? Oh, look, they're red morale. Okay, I better hit them with the machine guns. Oh, I better hit them with the mortars. Oh, I better shoot them some more with a rifle, which is all useless because they're hiding behind the walls, mostly. And so we had to go out of our way to train war gamers too sometimes, that our model at least is 4F. So we do things like, now words pop up, cowering, which is rather suggestive, next to the enemy you're shooting. And then the men may say, hey, they're looking pretty, they're hiding there. Maybe it's time to assault, in the boot camp, the tutorials. And then eventually we may break the fourth wall and we'll literally say, look, we're different from other games and you really should assault. Now, people can argue with me, and I have some fun conversations with grognards, but many of them come around, and I'm happy to quote chapter and verse. But the point is we have a combat model that requires a lot of learning, creates a learning curve for all types of gamers. So I'm trying to get that point across now so people understand. We're trying to give you a credible leadership experience. And that means we do some things different than other games do because we believe that is what it means to be credible from our standpoint.
When it comes to the game
one comment
itself and the scenarios that are in it or the missions, are those narrative driven like Ambush where you discover your objectives along the way, or is it like, here's your mission and we'll see what happens on the way?
Excellent question. So we took in two groups of people. We took in two folks, Steve and Hank, who are both. Steve Overton's actually a board game designer, a Fire Team Red Eclipse, and Hank Stouffer's, and they were both also Combat Mission digital game scenario designers, but they were war gamers. I don't think they'd mind my saying that. We brought in two writers, and they were from different worlds, and there was some friction early on. Like the writers were like, well, we need this scenario to have this narrative beat, right, and to have this kind of thing. And we're going to say, well, that's not interesting tactically. Today, they work together, but it was a long cycle to learn how to mesh the narrative and the tactical. So to answer your question concretely, you can trigger events by moving around the map, by the actions you do, you can trigger over all kinds of things. I wrote a sort of special scripting language on top of Inkle's ink, which was used in 80 days. So that means something to any of you. To do all that. So one direction is actions on the map drive narrative within limits, right? It is a linear campaign following the history, but the world can change based on what happened on a map. The victory conditions can change or be discovered, as you said, right? Suddenly Germans have arrived, armored column. You didn't expect that. Maybe your goal now is to get off the map, right? Not to take the objective. Inversely, the narrative can drive the battlefield. So classic kind of stuff we will do is, oh, it's pre-planning for the battle you know is coming. Well, you don't have time to get everything. Where do you want to put your leadership energy? Do you want to do it on fog of war and try and get some of the enemy revealed in advance? Do you want to work the politics, et cetera, to try and get extra artillery support? Do you want to go out and do some scouting yourself, et cetera? So narrative beforehand can change the battle. Narrative during the battle can change things. So we try to limit narrative during the battle because people are in the tactical. And then inversely, the tactical can drive the narrative. So, and then in between, the fiction's happening when you're essentially back in camp or wherever your base camp is at this moment. Things that happen in battle may affect you. The leaders you run, I can use a D&D metaphor for a moment. Your party is you as the captain and your lieutenants, essentially, right? That's your party of, your player characters. They will acquire stress over time and combat fatigue. And I could drone on about that if you wanted, but we model that explicitly. So over time, they may change, they may have emotional decisions, they may get killed, right? And you may have new people. And so there's a whole RPG side which can affect what happens in Battlefield. One example here. This actually is, you're the first people I ever talked to this outside of a little video I did. You can be, what's the guy, like Lieutenant Spears in Band of Brothers, the totally zealous guy. You can pick that as what we call your mindset, to echo Disco Elysium. And that mindset, guess what? You're good at rallies. I mean, not rallies. You're good at assaults, right? Because follow me, I'm a crazy dude who's going to run across the open space like, Lieutenant Spears. But zealous may get people killed, right? Because you're taking more risks. You can be a compassionate guy. So there's a whole level at which you are making leadership decisions of who you will be as a leader. Will you be Captain Winters? Are you some other person? Are you about the men or the mission? And you can help your lieutenants make those decisions. And then the type of leader they have chosen to be in the narrative by mindsets will influence the kind of leader they are on the battlefield, when they do assaults, when they look for the enemy, when they try to rally the men. In fact, I'll close with one that we've all been keen to do. For compassionate, you gain an ability to grandstand. It is humbling and disturbing how many leaders historically would do things like stand on the beach at Normandy and draw fire to essentially inspire the men to get up and get off the beach. John McManus has a whole book on that thing in D-Day. And so you can actually pick to be that type of person, but we will kill you if the dice go against you. Because I'm a nice guy.
Yeah. So if I might ask one thing about your relationship with your, designers like Steve Overton, what kind of a communication and role are you all playing? How do you milk out of them their experience to improve the game or create the game or develop the system that works? How does that work out in the digital world?
That's really interesting. Nobody's ever asked me that. So kudos. So when I was at Accenture, I wanted to become a good leader, and I'm not saying I am, but I put a lot of energy into that. And so when I came to this, running this team, thank you for this question. It's really very interesting to talk about. I was conscious, because I'd read a lot of things in leadership I wanted to establish in the culture. And the culture I wanted to establish was people can disagree civilly and talk to each other, have different views, and must be honest but kind in their honesty, right? You're stupid idiot, screw you, I'm doing it my way. That's really not going to create a lot of progress. On the other hand, oh, I love everything you do, it's wonderful, will not produce a good outcome. So we did a lot of acculturation of that. We get a lot of feedback from the playtesting team. We have a lot of volunteers. They think the culture is unusual and people talk to each other. And so we do a lot of, in a positive sense, groupthink. But I would say, to give them another level down of answer. So when we're thinking about the scenarios to do, what we try to decide is who is the lead, who is the where's the buck stop for a given scenario? So we might decide this is really a narrative scenario, even though it's got a map and so forth. And therefore, say Alan Geese, one of the writers, lead writer, he should be in charge of the scenario. And ultimately, the tactical guys, combat mission guys, have to give way to him. Inversely, we may say this is really a tactical one. Ultimately, the writer is an adjunct, an assistant to the tactical. And then, we get things in from the artists and the musicians and the play testers. And oh my gosh, from the feedback, we've been obsessive on collecting feedback and going through feedback cycles. But short version is we try to have a lot of voices, but clear processes to decide which voice ultimately gets to decide. And of course, I do have a veto, but I try not to use it too hard. There's too much to do, and you got to trust, right? Great question.
Well, it's interesting because I think your responses probably are the framework that you're developing the game around. That's the way military command works as well.
Yes.
You're looking for what soldier is better at this and who should I send in? You mentioned Spears. He's the guy that ran across, the open field, and he also machine gunned the German, surrenderers at D-Day, but you got to put that right guy in. And I think that's interesting to see that connection in your words and probably what you're trying to do.
You said something really important there. The most important leadership thing I learned when I was a formal business leader was everybody is different. Do not try to apply the same lessons to everyone. That was my biggest mistake. I came in early, these are the principles of leadership. No, you, Grant, are different from Alexander. I'm different. And understand, some people want to be told what to do. Other people hate it. And it reminded me of a fabulous book that I think they still teach at the Quantico, Battle Leadership, written by, in the 1930s. He's a German guy, became a Panzer Corps leader in World War II.
Not a German guy in the 30s. Oh,
no. He came and spoke about leadership in World War One. And what he said was essentially the same. He said, I had to be so conscious of who my reports were. So the stories are great. It's a very short book, but like one of them was, this guy thinks he knows it all. So you must start with what you don't want him to do so that he will correct you. And you basically put up two options. Oh, I'm thinking of doing this, which you intend for him to shoot down. You want to pick the other one so that he can, you say, I'm really going to do option A. And he says, oh, you stupid. You can't do option A, right? And so you say, oh my gosh, you're right. A little manipulative, but in a positive way. And then B happens. But if you told him to do it, it was your idea, disaster.
Wouldn't do it.
So, yeah, and other things like one more quick one, like, listen and echo. And if you had the idea, maybe don't say it and say good idea and be humble. I was probably not humble enough when I was young. I try better now, right? So I don't need to own that, oh, maybe I had that idea or not. And often I don't.
So we have about 5 minutes left before this all cuts out. So I wanted to kind of gauge where we're at in the kind of production process, how much longer we have to go before people can actually see the game, and what that's going to look like when it gets rolled out.
Well, I have been a masterful leader. I have absolutely executed according to plan, like when I announced in 2017 that we would release in 2018. So been slightly off. I was a young lieutenant. Members of the team said, don't give her the state. No. No, I know what I'm doing. Anyway, I have learned more what I'm doing, but I can tell you a little cool news here is we are going to announce our release window this summer. And I'm going to say something I haven't said public because I like you guys. It's not too big, but it is something nobody else has heard. My intent is to release it this month, not the game, release the window this month.
Okay.
And we'll be very public about our marketing plans and why we have this schedule, and why we're not giving you one date. It'll be sort of open marketing rather than a window, because there are things that can happen marketing wise will help us decide what the right date is, which I've been learning from our marketing lead, David, who's works for a lot of good companies, things like MicroProse. He's taught me a lot. So I try to be humble. Anyway, the state development is we're in late beta. We're still taking probably run, I don't know, we may run 150 to 200 people through it now. The early ones, we took tons of feedback and met with them every week. The current ones, it's more sort of banging at it and giving us direct feedback in our Discord. But
Well, Luke, if somebody wants to play test, are you still accepting people, or is there a way they can contact
Yes,
you, reach
absolutely.
out to you?
Thank you. Go to our website, thebirdandcommand.com. You'll see some things where you can think or hit me on Twitter. I run the Twitter account. And now I'll be honest with you, it's late beta. So playtesting now means mostly, we watch through telemetry. It means sort of indirect, what's happening with you? Are you winning or losing? We're not assessing you, we're assessing the game. And of course, bugs. And we take feedback for the future, what will be changed. We're not changing too much. Now we're changing quality of life when we get the feedback, of which there is an infinite horizon of quality of life. So,
Okay. Well, that was helpful. I appreciate that.
I'll say one other fun thing. We are planning to have a public demo during the process. So there will be
Okay.
a chance for people to assess.
One other question I want you, because you never gave the answer. What was the game that you've designed?
Oh, well, thank you for that. So
Yeah.
early on, the first game I really seriously designed was for Victory Point Games. Some of you may recognize them. Worked a wonderful guy, Alan Emmerich, and it was called The World Will Hold Its Breath. And it was World War II in an evening, and it's a solitaire game, and you play the Germans, basically. And it was all strategic. It's sort of originally inspired by the State of Siege systems, but really wasn't that by the end. But you're making armaments decisions, industrial decisions, political decisions, obviously military decisions. And my goal was to give you great space for things to go wildly different or very similar ways. And after Burden gets out, my ambition is to go back to that. I have the rights. VPG ran into some trouble under the previous. It went in at full alpha. It was a playable full prototype. I completed everything at alpha level. After Burden comes out, my ambition is to get that out, and so I hope I'll be back to talk about decisions in World War II, and what could have gone differently, because I obsessively looked at why did the leaders pick this versus that? What did they consider instead? Sea lion versus not. But especially what they didn't do, they thought about doing.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds great.
Really, it's a pleasure to talk to you too. And thanks everyone who chose to watch this long.
Yes. So, Luke, thanks very much for your time. And everyone out there, appreciate you very much for tuning in. I'm Alexander for thePlayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.